Let's go beyond the connection. Welcome to the podcast today. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. And today we've got two very special guests on. We've got folks that are dealing with network reliability, connectivity, resilience every day across many, many different companies. BJ Olson, you are the founder of 27 Technology Group, and this is what you do and live and breathe. It's not your first rodeo. You're what I would call a serial entrepreneur, started 5 or 6 different companies, and that's where you guys worked together in the past. Ryan Bowden, you are a technologist at heart. You've helped BJ in a number of different businesses. To our point here today, and what we're talking about people's network, keeping it up, keeping it running, keeping it connected and resilient. And you actually worked with Verizon at a Verizon retailer, and you placed many different businesses on those services, like 60 plus location businesses, single location businesses. What I'd love to do is, before we jump in, because we're going to talk about connectivity insurance. And BJ, that was your coined phrase. I love the way that you talked about it, like an insurance from our network going down. And we all know what happens when it goes down. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But what's the insurance? How do we be proactive to make sure that we have these resilient networks? But what I'd love to do is give you guys just a few minutes to expand a little bit more on your background before we get started. And BJ, I'd love to have you start out if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is BJ Olson. I'm the founder of 27 Technology Group. As Steven mentioned, my wheels started in wireless August 28th, 2006. The reason why I remember that date is the very first day I ever sent a text message in my entire life. Sitting there in initial wireless class at Verizon, and my instructor told me to text message or send a text to our boss, with our employee ID. And I had actually asked the person next to me how to do that. So that was my start into wireless. And from there, I kind of fell in love with it. I love the aspect of, connecting people, connecting things, connecting businesses. And it's been, an amazing journey. And then after leaving Verizon on the corporate side, I went over to the wireline side for a year with CenturyLink. And I learned really, really quickly that I did not like being connected to a wire or connected to a fiber line. And I had to go back over to Verizon once again. And that's where Ryan and I met up. And then through that connection, I started to get the entrepreneurship bug, right? And I opened 5 eBreak I Fix electronic repair stores. And then after doing that for a while, I had an opportunity to kind of step away and figure out another thing that I wanted to do. And at that point, I'm like, well, the only thing I've ever really known is technology and wireless. So I just started to start 27 Technology Group, got an opportunity to essentially work with the old folks that I had worked with Verizon and help them and their customers set up technology, set up solutions, and help their customers understand how to use them a little bit better. So I got to use my knowledge that I'd collected for 10 plus years and start utilizing it for, these entrepreneurs who own businesses, and something that I love and near and dear to my heart because of my eBreak I Fix stores. And then, I also own a couple other businesses in South Dakota. I opened South Dakota's very first medical marijuana dispensary, also has real estate things. And I love business. I love all aspects of business, and being able to utilize technology in business is exactly what I'm meant to do. So it's been very fun. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Ryan, maybe if you could explain a little bit more about your background and your working relationship with BJ over the years, that'd be great.
So I've been in the industry here for about 11 years, I guess, since 2015. Got my start with a Verizon indirect retailer, managing IT over on that side of things, implementing standards, ensuring connectivity, so on and so forth. And as you can imagine, across 60 locations, it's highly important for these locations to stay online, to ring out sales. But yeah, anyway, so BJ and I, that's where we connected, was at that indirect retailer. And when we got the chance again, years later here, to connect and work together again, we did. And we haven't looked back.
I want to start us out and thank you guys for explaining your backgrounds, because it's really important then for you as the experts to make the recommendations here. And BJ, I want to just start right in with you. You were very direct in your introductions there that you had a real preference for wireless, but that's not always the perception in the industry. Perception in the industry is, hey, give me a wired connection. I can rely on that. I can trust that. So I see you shaking your head. Please take us through, myth bust us for a little bit here, right? On your perceptions, and then actually what's happened in the marketplaces, and how you change the perceptions into something that's much more resilient when the two are combined.
Yeah, absolutely. So, wireline connections, they serve a certain purpose. But if we're talking about the advancement of technology and where we're going for the future, I don't foresee anybody building out any infrastructures, on telephone poles or digging trenches in the ground anymore. The future is 100% wireless. And when you talk about redundancy and resilience of a communication network, you look at Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T, and you look at the infrastructure that these guys have spent billions of dollars on building. And then you look at your infrastructure that you have in your office that is built by the one fiber line that is feeding everything. And if that one fiber line were to go down, you're out of business, right? You're incapacitated until that gets back up. But if you put the trust in those cellular carriers, they have so many redundancies built into their networks alone, but it also keeps you free of having to worry about any of those, fiber cuts or those downtimes by your local ISP. Statistically, if you look, the smaller local ISPs are down significantly more than some of these larger carriers. And that's because they've built so many things into their networks to ensure that things don't happen like that.
Now, I want to take this to probably some of the objections that you get. Like, Ryan, I know you've heard this before. Yeah, but I can't rely on wireless, right? I'm not necessarily in a major metro. I have locations or I do business. My clients or my team, they're out and they're on the road, and I can't just rely on wireless, right? Like, take us through that thinking, what BJ was saying there, and apply it into those situations where I know you get those questions.
Yeah, honestly, once we show the customer the speed, we get a chance to demo it or test it with them, which we often do. I've sent equipment out and said, I'll take it back if it doesn't work. They've never sent it back because it does work. So yeah, like I said, it just speaks for itself once you get it in their hands.
So tell me a little bit about, there's not only just the connections, there's, and now we're working with low orbit satellites, like satellite receptivity is coming in, fixed wireless access. Talk a little bit, maybe if you could, BJ, about just kind of the explosion of options that are available to us today.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. When it comes to connections to a business, you have tons of different options, starting out with the traditional fiber connection, which everybody starts with. But, if you're in a wireless area, it doesn't matter if it's 4G or 5G, that wireless connection can do a lot for you. And I think there's also a pretty good misnomer about how much data a person really needs to be efficient in their workplace. 4G, is still able to get some really impressive speeds to help do, video or uploading, downloading of documents, completely able to support a business network for a sustained period of time. And then you got your 5G network, right? Not only can it sustain the ability for that business to stay open, but it can provide the speeds that it needs to provide a really high speed fiber-like connection, but through the air. And then you also have the backup of a satellite connection. So not only that is you can put all of those connections all together, all in one place. And that's what, the Bigleaf network solution provides is you could take a fiber connection, you could take a 4G connection, you could take a 5G connection, and you could take a satellite connection, put them all one box, and you have the ultimate in redundancy because all four of those things would have to fail in order for your internet connection to go down. And if all four of those things failed, it would be a really, really, really bad day for all of us.
So I want to ask, you brought up Bigleaf and you brought up the ability to put all those connections together. There's intelligence, right? There's a software component, there's intelligence that's on that box that's bringing all those different ISP connections together. What can you tell us, BJ, about that level of intelligence that is constantly looking for the best right connection and automatically, changing back and forth? But don't I have to worry about IPs and static IP addresses and things like that? Or, what are the concerns about that? Or does that intelligence take care of all of that?
You nailed it. So the intelligence that's built into the Bigleaf solution, it's basically like having somebody sit there and monitor your network traffic 24/7, making sure that you're always on the best connection. And it's always pushing those connections together to give you the maximum speed and maximum throughput that you can get from those connections that are available. And then when it comes to, IP addresses, and this is one of the biggest downfalls to, a traditional wireless network, is traditionally you can get one IP address for one wireless connection. But now with the Bigleaf solution, that's no longer the case. We can get multiple IP addresses for that single connection because we have multiple devices coming into it. And then the IP address is handed out from the Bigleaf network versus the actual cellular network. So it makes it so much easier for customers in an instance where something does go down, it can hand off and it can handle multiple IPs very easily.
Backing that up, Ryan, what you had said earlier is you've just made the offer. Hey, if this stuff doesn't work, we'll just take it all back. And you've never had anybody take it back. So here's my question is, in that kind of an environment with that kind of confidence, right? What is it that, in terms of insurance, like that's kind of the title of our podcast here today, right? Connectivity insurance. It sounds like you're putting the ultimate amount of insurance behind this, right? And you guys run your own business on this, right? BJ, you're an entrepreneur. You know the downside of when a business goes down and what happens. What are some of the questions that you get from entrepreneurs, from, IT folks that are in charge of this network and keeping it up and running, that you can give them the insurance or the assurance, right? That you're still in control, right? You've got the ultimate amount of control over your network now. Like, how do you explain that to them?
Yeah, I mean, the control aspect, I love showing on the dashboard, especially for multi-location. I mean, you get a breakdown of all your connections, what's up, what's down, how many connections are online, offline. You can see all your connected devices really from one portal. And so it gives you that insight globally, immediately, which makes your life, as an IT professional much easier. I would have loved this back in my day with 60 locations. Something goes down, you're going to be able to solve that problem much quicker. And it's going to, at the end of the day, make you the hero. So that's a nice aspect.
The IT guys that I've talked to, it's not like their groups are growing, right? They're actually, with the trend of technology and the smart intelligence on top of it, they have to do more with less, is the environment they're in. And BJ, does this fill that strategy where they like, I got to do more, but I don't have more resources, but I need more assurance, I need more insurance, and I need to be able to check, I need to be able to look, I need to be able to decipher, I need to be able to just troubleshoot, right? Does this smart intelligence, the Bigleaf connection that you're talking about here, does it do that? Does it accomplish that?
Yeah, I can tell you firsthand as a small business owner, from a retail location to opening South Dakota's first dispensary to having, 27 Technology Group, your reputation is your connectivity and being able to be up. I can't communicate with customers if I'm not up. I cannot have customers communicate with me if I'm not up. In a retail setting, you cannot process orders in many cases, and those types of things will stick with you. If a customer comes into your location and you have to send them away because you're unable to process an order, or you're unable to, they can't access the phone because you're on a voice over IP system and now all the phone systems are down. We live in a society today where information and access is just too readily available. If your customer can't get to you, they will get to somebody else because they Googled your phone number anyway to figure it out. So they had to go past somebody else that does what you do to get your phone number. And I always tell business owners this. I mean, it is insurance for your business. As a business owner myself, I've spent so many thousands of dollars on insuring this and insuring that. And it seems like every time you turn around, you're paying an insurance premium for your business. But really, when you look at what your business is and how you make your business, it's through that connectivity, connecting to your customers, being able to process orders, being able to take payments. And if you're not putting the insurance into having that connectivity active all the time, then you're really, really jeopardizing a lot more than you think. As a small business owner, your reputation is everything. And if you're not up, like I said, it's too easy to leave you at this particular point, or go online or go to the next person. So I cannot stress it enough. Again, the dollars that you can have into this are minimal compared to the other insurances that you pay.
What's interesting, in our last conversation that we had, Ryan, you were talking about that even though that's the case, we all know when we lose connectivity, huge bad things happen. But a lot of companies kind of wait until that moment happens. They wait till the hurt happens, right? Without being, proactive on this. Like, what is your message to the audience on like, don't wait? Like what BJ just said here, the cost to actually have this insurance versus the potential risk. Even with the technology today, there's still a lot of outages, right? So, like, how do you consult with the clients that you guys have in terms of not waiting till it hurts?
Yeah, I always look at, how are they approaching things? I mean, being proactive over reactive on these things, it's a much better solution or way to look at things, I would say. Just because, okay, your connection goes down. What's that do to your image with your customers? Or, let alone your employees are just sitting there, you're paying your overhead. So you might as well make sure this connection stays up if your business is relying on it, right? Be proactive, not reactive.
Yeah. And figure out what your true downtime costs you. I know that was an exercise, and maybe because I'm a nerd, I'm in this industry. So I wanted to figure out what it actually cost me at all of my retail locations for 1 hour of downtime, 1 hour of downtime. And you can kind of go backwards from there. But depending on the location, depending on the store that I had, it was anywhere from $250 to $2,500 per hour. And that was overhead, that was turning customers and orders away, that was paying employees to be there. And that's only for 1 hour. Now, I've had situations where I've talked to customers where a line was cut somewhere and they've been down for 2 days. Now, magnify that, and it gets expensive so quickly. And again, to Ryan's point too, your customers can just go somewhere else. So that cost of not having those connections or that uptime is more than just what you're going to feel that day. You might feel that cost coming back and haunting you in the future as well.
I want to pair that up with something that you said at the very beginning of the podcast. You're like, it's all about wireless, digging trenches, making wired connections. There's things like the Internet of Things, there's sensors, there's things about our business, right? That we just can't wire, don't want to wire. In fact, we had on the podcast a gentleman, he was the CIO of the Atlanta Hartsfield Airport, largest airport in the world. He says, Steve, we have every ability to bring in T1 lines here. Like, we can wire ourselves. He said, but we are on a wireless first strategy. And he gave me an example. He said, we just put in a new AC system in the airport, 20,000 wireless sensors. He says, I have to be wired. He says, that's just one example. And you said, like the carriers, they need wireless to support their customers that are coming to the gates and logging in and making changes and getting status. And like, what, BJ, is your vision when you talk about it? Has to be a wireless future, has to be wireless first. We're not saying get rid of your wired lines at all, but what's your point of view on why the industry is, you're backwards if you're looking, I have to have my wired connections as my first strategy, and you're not looking to the future. Like, how do you frame that for us?
Yeah, well, actually, I'm working with a customer right now who, built out several buildings, in the 1990s and early 2000s. They wired them all. And now they have to go through, and they've done a lot of different updates to the wiring. And now they're just to the point again where they've got to do another update to the wiring to these facilities. And each facility now is approaching $100,000 to just rewire. So they came to us and they're like, there's got to be a better way. And I said, absolutely, there's a better way. It's a wireless infrastructure, and it's making sure that you have the things put in place. And this was a healthcare organization. There are things to put in place, because that was the thing they were afraid of is, the reliability. And I said, there are things to put in place that will ensure that you are better connected in some cases than what you would be with any sort of, fiber line connection. And we can make that happen. But if you are a healthcare organization, or if you are, a bank organization, or any sort of organization that, government, schools, doesn't matter. Like, if you need the internet to perform your duty, your public duty, your business duty, your whatever, there is no excuse for you not to have some sort of redundancy. The thing I want everybody to do is the next time you go to work, ask your boss, what do we have in place if our internet goes out today? Because I want to know if I'm taking the day off or if you have some sort of redundancy and things are going to kick back and our customers are going to be able to reach out to you. Because if the answer is that I'm going to take the day off, have them call me. I'll gladly help them get you connected and get you back up and going.
Two examples, healthcare and finance. Healthcare, lives can be at stake. I mean, when networks go down, access to customer or patient data, all the medications they're on, all the things that the physicians, the nurse practitioners, everybody needs to know to make sure that that patient has not only the best care, but that they're actually getting the care that they need. There cannot be a place where connection to the internet is more important. And I would just love to ask, is there that client that you had that you put in that network infrastructure? Have they worried about it since? Has there been any issues since? Or is this like a true case study where it's like, look, even in the most important areas, a wireless first strategy is most important?
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. I mean, they're still in the mix of rolling it out, but so far there's been zero issues. It's actually been a lot easier because now all they're doing is putting access points throughout their facility versus having to run wires through all the conduit through this building that's now approaching 30 years old.
So I would love to hear, if you wouldn't mind, we remember stories 22 times better as human beings. It was a Harvard Business Review study than like straight stats. What are some stories about like their perceptions and then reality? I'm old enough to know there was a Rolling Stone ad campaign about the perception of Rolling Stone and the reality of what Rolling Stone was. It wasn't just druggies. It was like people getting out of their BMWs that were reading Rolling Stone. What's the perception versus the reality with the customers that you service every single day?
Yeah, I mean, the perception is we went through a period where data plans were limited, right? Capped, et cetera. There's unlimited data now. People sometimes, business owners, they don't realize that. They don't realize that there is a true unlimited wireless connection available, and it's high speed. We're talking hundreds of megabytes a second, possibly a gigabyte, depending on your carrier. And sometimes that's faster than your wireline connection that's even available in your building. So those are some of the realities. I mean, sometimes, like I said, business owners just don't realize these things.
And I'll add to that too. If they're looking to have throughput, right? Maybe they say, hey, I need that 1 gig connection and it's not available to you. Through the Bigleaf solution, we could bond those multiple networks together to ensure that they get that throughput. So if that takes 3 SIM cards from the same carrier or 3 SIM cards from one of each of the carriers to get them there, we can help get that customer to the throughput and the reliability that they need. Very easy. And in many cases, cheaper than the internet connection that they're bringing in through the wall.
Did you get to say everything that you wanted to say? Did you get to pretty much cover everything you wanted to cover?
The only
Yeah.
one thing I forgot to mention is more of a technicality of the device. It doesn't require replacing your firewall. It sits in between. This is an addition, not a replacement part for your network. It's not this big expensive project of having to relearn all your systems, new firewalls, replacing all that hardware. This sits in between. It's transparent.
You don't have to rework your whole network strategy to add
No.
Bigleaf into the system.
The thing I think too that's important to let people, it's a lot easier to do than you think. So many times people are like, oh, this is just going to be complicated, especially when we get wireless involved because they don't like one thing or the other about wireless. But it's not difficult at all. That's actually why we're here to help hold their hands to ensure that everything goes smoothly from A to Z and everything in between. I can promise you that the connection, the stability, the throughput is everything that we'll say it's going to be, or we'll take it back. Like it's that easy. We will fix the solution or we can't.
I feel like we've covered so much territory. I want to ask one last question of each of you guys. If there was one main takeaway that you wanted the audience, other technology people at various stages of companies and all over the various industries, multiple industries, if you were talking to them, the customers that you deal with every single day, what's the one most important takeaway that you would want to leave them from our conversation here?
Yeah. Insurance. This is insurance for your business. And if you can't afford to ensure your business has uptime, then you're probably not going to be in business very long. And I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm not saying that to be judgmental. I'm just saying that based on my experience, based on my knowledge, and based on, the 20 years of working in the wireless industry with these companies, the companies that are still around and they're succeeding are the companies that invest money into their infrastructure and they just take care of the problem. They don't have to hire additional people in their IT staff to monitor the network because they utilize the solutions that can do it for them. Or they hire people like us to ensure that they get the solution that they need to just be taken care of. So invest into your network, invest into the insurance into your network. Literally for a few $100s a month, you can ensure that your employees don't have to sit around and do this all day, that your customers don't have to go to the next listing on Google, or that they have to call somebody else, in the phone book if they're still going that direction. But there's just so many more upsides by having a redundant connection with a Bigleaf network that I can't even list them all, but I'm happy to talk to anybody. Call me up. Let's sit down and let's literally talk strategy on why it's important for you to keep going. Like, it has to happen.
One thing before, Ryan, you say anything, let's talk strategy. I talk to a lot of chief technology officers on this podcast. And one of the things that has become true that wasn't true before is that they have a seat at the table in terms of corporate strategy and revenue growth that they've never had before, because the network is so important for all the things you guys have been saying, right? They're not a support department anymore. They are a lifeline to the data, the information, the decision-making, the customer experience support that can run across the network. You just can't, like you said, stack up all the benefits, but that's what it reminded me of when you said that, is that, like, look, let's talk strategy. This is strategy for your business.
Yeah. I look at the investment that you put into your network almost as a reverse marketing. And what I mean by that is it's always the strategy to stay off the 5 o'clock news when you're a business, right? And if you are down for the day and you got customers lined up out the door because you can't service them, that's a potential to make it on the 5 o'clock news, right? But by putting a few dollars into your network ensures that you don't have to worry about that. I mean, people are spending hundreds to thousands, several thousands of dollars on marketing to get those customers. Spend a few bucks on your network to ensure that you get to keep those customers.
I love it. I love it. Ryan, what's your one takeaway that you'd want people to have here?
Yeah, I said it a few times, but proactivity over reactivity here. We can help you prevent downtime before it inevitably impacts your business. I mean, hopefully it doesn't, but it's inevitable in a lot of cases and it's definitely preventable. And we're here to help you with that.
I just wanted to say thank you guys for coming on. The mission in this podcast is that we want to talk to the businesses that are toiling with their networks and resiliency and throughput and the consistency that you've been talking about. And then those that are supplying that industry and working as strategic consultants like yourself. And if we can all bring our experiences and all of our perceptions, our experiences, our realities, and share it with each other, then we're all stronger for it. It's like the rising tide that lifts all boats. And so I just want to say thank you for coming on today and sharing, but absolutely enlightening.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Steve.